Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? She said to him, Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world.
When she had said this, she went and called her sister Mary, saying quietly, The teacher is here and is calling for you. And when she heard it, she rose quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still in the place where Martha had met him. When the Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary rise quickly and go out, they followed her, supposing that she was going to the tomb to weep there.
Does anybody else have it, or shall I start?
I have it. Okay. Then when Mary was come where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying unto him, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus therefore saw her weeping, and the Jews also weeping who came with her, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled, and said, Where have you laid him? They said unto him, Lord, come and see. Jesus wept. Then said the Jews, Behold how he loved him.
But some of them said, Could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, Take away the stone. Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead for 4 days. Jesus said to her, Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God? So they took away the stone, and Jesus looked upwards and said, Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me. When he said this, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, Unbind him and let him go. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and had seen what Jesus did, believed in him.
I'm sure we've all heard this story many times before.
Mm-hmm.
Anything jump out at you that you want to lift up that was either new or affirming or a surprise?
Other than Thomas called the twin, I've never heard that before.
Okay.
I thought it was interesting. Okay, Jesus was a friend, a good friend.
Right.
Yet he decided not to go right away. And he was hearing everybody crying and weeping, and he was disturbed and deeply moved. And that's the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept.
True.
What was, oh, go ahead.
But I thought that he was, okay, from an outsider's point of view, it almost seemed like he was being cavalier. Don't answer it.
Huh. That Jesus.
Sorry, let me have it.
Oh, what I wanted to say was, when Jesus said dead. And he said, I'm glad I wasn't there so that I can do this and you will then believe. He wasn't there. He wanted Lazarus to be dead
Right.
so that he could show that he was Son of God by bringing him back to life.
I think the thing that moved me the most is Amy. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, Amy.
I think the thing that touched me most deeply was in the translation that either I have or someone else had, which said, Jesus groaned.
Oh, groaned.
Yeah. What verse is that? I can't find it.
It's verse 35, and I have Jesus began to weep.
I know.
And
There are
that's
two. There are two definitions, I guess, but mine says Jesus groaned with grief. With grief.
And in the King James, where it's shortest, that says Jesus wept.
Right.
Right. Right.
So Amy B here, two of the things that really stood out to me, and I almost burst out laughing, were the comments about the stench, because he'd already been in the cave 4 days, and then him walking out with the wrappings and whatnot. And I guess I've been dealing with some health issues over the past 3 months, and those images, the stench, the wrappings, it makes it very real to me. It makes it very human. It makes it very accessible.
Right.
Yes.
This is Bonnie. What stood out to me, I thought Martha had a lot of nerve in verse 21 when she said to Jesus, if you had been here, my brother would not have died.
Yeah.
And they were friends, and I thought that's exactly how she felt, and
Yeah.
she's so authentic. But that took a lot of nerve, I thought.
well, I thought
I want to go back. I want to go back to Amy B, who said that she had been suffering some health issues in the recent months. Is that right,
Yes.
Amy? And I don't want to go, I'm not trying to probe that, but I'm trying to say that I can imagine how this must perhaps speak to you with a greater potency and poignancy. So I just wanted to mention that.
yes.
So thank you.
In the King James Version, it says, he does thinketh. That's how they explain that stench. He does thinketh.
No, I think this is Lucretia. I think that that I'm hearing several people say there's a realness about this passage that comes through. And as in lots of scripture, it touches us where we're living personally. I heard something in this passage that I haven't heard, I don't think, before. And it's probably from being in this pandemic, and I've had to be quarantined for the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks almost. And it's the importance of community.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very last passage, verse 44, when Lazarus comes out, Jesus instructs the community to unbind him and let him go.
Ah.
There's a community that is needed for Lazarus to be free. And I'm thinking where we're living today and all that's going on, the importance of community when we're in our own little cocoons.
Mm-hmm.
and experience the need of community even more powerfully. But it's going to be us as a community that ultimately is able to walk forward and for each other. So that really hit me, Bob.
That's great.
I was thinking about in the midst of the pandemic where people are dying from that, we have someone within our own congregation, and that's Forrest, who has just died. And that was really kind of coming out in this also because of the community. I agree with you there. I've been hearing all of the watching all the YouTube videos of the different songs that the choir had been singing, and it was it brings me to tears every time.
Yes. You mean the posting that Gabe did on the website when he conducted the choir?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was another one from could have been Easter or could have been Christmas. I can't remember what the song was now, that I saw on Facebook that somebody had posted.
I saw a thing on Facebook from Temple, and it was the music group. And
Oh, that was
Wasn't that
wonderful.
lovely? Yes.
Oh, goodness.
What was it?
If you go in the FUMCOG Facebook, scroll down, it's his community from school, and they had somebody showing a camera, and everybody's singing, and they pan around the whole group. It is just lovely.
And Frederico is in that group.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they did that so Forrest could see it before he died.
And the song was "You Are Not Alone." It wasn't the one that we sang with Forrest, but the idea was "You Are Not Alone." It was lovely. It was really moving.
You know, when Forrest sang the version "You're Not Alone with Us,"
Yeah.
that's one of my absolute favorite memories.
Me too.
Of worship with him.
Yes.
Because of his vulnerability and his inviting us as community. It gets back to this community piece, as community be present with each other.
Yes.
That was powerful. And how the congregation responded immediately in that too.
And sang, yes.
Yeah.
You know what? I just want to say this thing again, that what stands out for me. And Ruth and I read this before we came on. And the first thing I said to her after we finished reading it out loud was, "Do you believe this? Do you believe this?" And it still stands out to me that Jesus, who was far away from Bethany, that Jesus let his friend die so that he could produce his biggest miracle. And this was his biggest miracle, so that the village would see and believe. It's almost political.
Oh, it's very
Sorry.
political. So I want to lift up the two things that Jesus says is first a command, Lazarus come out, and then as Lucretia pointed out to the community, unbind him and let him go. Two acts of liberation, coming out and unbinding. So how do we come out from death and unbind it and let go to live? So, and both Mary and Martha separately said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Martha says it first, and then Mary goes out to greet Jesus, even before he got to the village. And when Mary came to Jesus, she said to him, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. If you had been here. Can we say that? If Jesus had been here, or can we make the affirmation that Jesus is here?
Could I say something again, going back a little bit, Bob?
Yes.
Or whoever? I was listening to what you said, and this doesn't follow from it. I hope we can go back to what you said, but I just found the part that I was looking for, if I could refer to it again. Yeah. And it's in verse 33, and it's in my Bible, or one of the translations I have heard. It said, when Jesus saw her weeping, Mary.
Yes.
And the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit, and that's where it was groaned. He groaned and was troubled, and he said, where have you laid him? And they said to him, Lord, come and see. And Jesus wept. So that's the humanity of Jesus that grips me as I read.
I also think it's combining that with what Bob was asking. I think it's also human nature to want to place the blame somewhere, put the responsibility somewhere. You know, like one of the things that drove me crazy was Trump calling COVID-19 the Chinese flu, and you know, these kinds of things, there's really no fault to be placed. It just happened. And how you deal with what happened is more important than how did it happen.
Yeah. Good point.
But Bob, I wanted to come back to what you said. He said, Lord, Mary said, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And when you said, can we say that? Sure, she can say that. Can we say that? And what are you referring to?
I don't have. Hold on. Keep holding on.
Don't we feel more about Jesus' presence when say he had been here?
I'm just going to stop.
We seem to assume that in the resurrection, Jesus is ever present.
I was on a wait.
Now you've lost the sound.
Okay, just a minute. Here it is.
We hear you, Lucretia.
What's that?
I was telling Lucretia we heard her. We just couldn't see her.
So on the lighter side, I've got to tell you this, that part about if you had been here, he would not have died. I think I told this story to some of you. I had a very anxious office manager when I was in Havertown. And there was one funeral director that had cared for most of the people in the church in the time of death. So one day I walked in the office. This was before cell phones. I think it was in the age of beepers or something, and I didn't have one. So I walk in, and he says, I've been trying to get you. What was his name? Vivian, Frank's been trying to call you. So-and-so died. I said, are they still dead? He said, yes. I said, okay, then I'll call him back. Like, if you were here, he wouldn't have died. Well, no. Because he was dead.
But it's still, this is Barbara. I still, when nobody's responded to this, that I think it was a political act, that Jesus waited on purpose. He didn't go right away.
Right.
And what Mary said to him becomes really important, that if you had been here, he wouldn't have died, because Jesus maybe meant for him to be dead so that he could perform this miracle. Now, nobody's responded to that, and I said that was a political act.
It is, and he does, and he says it. I'm trying to find the line.
Right.
It's near the beginning.
But-
Verse 6.
But
Yes.
it makes me think of the book When Bad Things Happen to Good People.
Yeah.
I don't think, personally, I don't think Jesus let it happen. I think once it happened, he used that opportunity for political purpose or to show, hey, here's what the Spirit of the Lord can do. Because then we could start to wonder, well, if he had the ability from the beginning to let him not die, why didn't he just do that?
So here's the real, exactly, that
Because it wouldn't have been a miracle when your friend shows up and you revive, you're alive and you revive. That's a bit different from being dead and being revived.
right.
Very much of a bit.
You're using the right word. This is not a resurrection. This is not a resurrection. He was revived because he's going to die later. If it was a resurrection, he wouldn't die later. But that, if you're dead and you come to life, you're only going to die again some other time in some other place. But it is about the power of Jesus in life, especially since it won't be too long after this story that Jesus himself is crucified.
Exactly.
This is the Sunday before Palm Sunday. And I have two books here by John Deere, one called Lazarus Come Forth, and the other one, Walking the Way, a Lenten devotional. And John Deere is very, very political. He's the heir to the work of Daniel Berrigan. And he sees all this through the eyes of violence and nonviolence. So this was a community, and the people that were with Mary, as Lucretia noted, the community, they were mourners. I mean, in those days when someone died, the community, the women, especially in the community, came together to the survivor, and they cared for the one who died. And they were professional mourners. They themselves cried and showed emotion over the loss.
Well, two things. One, Barbara said about being a political act, and two, a revival, not a resurrection. His disciples have asked him, why are you going back there? They tried to stone you before.
Yeah.
And is it not a political act to go back, one? And two, he says Lazarus is asleep. He didn't say he's dead.
Right.
Right. John is the gospel where Jesus does things that people warned him against doing. And it starts with the woman at the well. It said Jesus needed to go through Samaria, but he didn't need to go through Samaria to get to Jerusalem. And then when he told the disciples what was going to happen when he got to Jerusalem, how he would suffer, die, and on the third day be raised, they tried to persuade him not to go. So the whole movement of Jesus from where he is to Jerusalem is really significant because he's going at the time of Passover to a time when the city would be full, but it would also be full of Romans who were against the Jews coming together in that mass because the Romans were afraid of an insurrection by the Jews. I mean, this was occupied territory. It wasn't, the Romans were in their land. So this all comes around at this time in our church calendar now. It's the holy time of year, but it's holy for Christians because it was first holy for Jews. And the interesting thing is everybody in this story is Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
There were no Christians yet.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Dan Berrigan said there was only ever one Christian, and he was a Jew.
So Palm Sunday is over
It's around the
around the same time.
Next week.
Okay,
Sunday after this.
okay. It changes depending on the calendar. Okay. I wanted to go back to say one thing before we miss it about Mary and Martha. So I'm assuming that the story about Mary and Martha, where Martha was doing all the work and Mary was sitting at Jesus' feet. And I thought it was interesting in this story that Martha went out to meet Jesus, but Mary stayed at home.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I said typical, and then I thought, no, it's not exactly typical, because Mary usually was right there with Jesus. But did you notice later that Martha went back and called her sister and said, he's calling for you, you have to come. So I was just looking at their interaction. I don't know what that means exactly, but
yeah, and the other story
Mm-hmm.
of the lessons, it's Martha who's in the kitchen and Mary goes out to sit with Jesus.
exactly.
Here it's Martha who leaves first to go
Yeah,
meet Jesus, and maybe as Amy said, to find fault that, if you had been here, like to find where the blame lies.
right. Oh,
It's interesting in verse 13, Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. And we have the other raising story with Jairus' daughter. When it's a story that goes, two stories always are combined, where he's going to Jairus. Who wants to just touch Jesus's robes, that she would be healed of this issue of blood that she's had for 12 years, which is the same age as the girl, Jairus' daughter. And Jesus, going to Jairus' daughter, feels this power go out of him when this woman touches him, and she's healed. And when he gets there, she's dead, and Jesus gets everybody out of the room and prays a prayer similar to this, that to God that his glory would be recognized in this. And then he went back out and said, no, she was only asleep, not dead. And Jairus' daughter was alive. So the Bible has these nice pieces about that's, I mean, again, the political side is that life is more powerful than death. But we spend all of this money on military to defeat our enemies, to do violence against one another, and as if that's where the power is. But it's the power is in love and being able to have peace over the violence, and life over death. And that all comes together in Jerusalem at Passover.
Yeah, I think that's really, really evident, but very beautiful when the disciples say, "Why do you want to go back there?" when they were trying to kill you, and Jesus answers about light and darkness. And
What verse?
Verse 7, 8, 9.
oh yeah, okay.
And 10. And that's another thing. And I thought you were going to bring that up, Bob, because you've been talking last week about the light and the dark. So once again, he's talking about Faith.
And can't you imagine right now, family members saying to nurses and doctors and pharmacists and first responders, no, please don't go, stay home. I want you here. And yet many of them are responding to the call to take care of others.
Yes.
Well, Amy, that's so. There was an interview this morning, I think it was on WHYY, of two doctors. I think they're in Georgia, husband and wife. And the husband is the kind of doctor that's working on patients that are being affected with the virus. The wife gave birth to a baby within the last few weeks. It's a newborn baby. So they're living in their house, but they're living in separate rooms, and they don't mingle. They don't mingle, and they're both on the phone from their separate rooms. It was really an interesting piece, and that's what it was about. You know, the woman feels like this is what her husband can do, and do that, and saying that if she didn't have the baby, she would be out there too. But yeah, how this is dividing or separating us.
But she wants to protect the baby.
That's exactly.
Doesn't want him anywhere near his baby.
That's exactly. And he doesn't want to harm the baby. But
Or his wife.
Strange times.
People are making sacrifices all around us. I was at the store and saw people working as though there was nothing going on. They had a plexiglass in front of them when they were checking you out.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yes. But I thought they were so noble, and I wish them well, but they're going about their job.
What store was that?
Giant.
Wow. New.
Yeah, well, Jeff Brown, I think, started that. There was a piece on him last night on the news. He put plexiglass up in all of his ShopRites between the customer and the cashier.
That works.
A screen.
Yeah.
Well, you told us to stay with the Bible and not to get into today. Except I don't know if you saw on the screen that we have unlimited time now.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yes, we're past 40 minutes and we're still on.
No, thanks to Zoom. I mean, they do this. I think it's their way of marketing and saying, hey, we're being nice to you by our services. We may do.
I hope they were listening in and like what we were doing.
Bob, are we on Sunday? Will it be a YouTube again, or will it be something else?
Gabe, I'll let Gabe take that.
Oh, Gabe, I'm sorry. Will it be a YouTube or what?
We're still trying to. Well, Jody, Bob, and I talked about it yesterday, and what we're likely going to do is parts of the services will be recorded in the sanctuary, and we're going to piece it together here on Zoom and then post the video. And that way, you know, Bob can do his sermon if he wants in the sanctuary alone and record himself, and then we'll piece it all together through Zoom, and it'll flow like a regular service.
But Dave, this
Yes.
is Amy. I'm sort of inadequate about Zoom, so can I still see it if I go to the website?
Yeah, so what I'll try to do is I'll try to upload it as well to YouTube again. I think I should be able to do that, and then embed it on the website again as well.
Well, the advantage of the website is that, advantage of YouTube will be that somebody could hear it the next day. So you don't have to be in that day, in that spot at that time in order to hear it.
Right.
Thank you for your work on that.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's great having him in a lot of ways, but he's making things happen when, if he weren't here, this thing wouldn't be happening. Jesus would be here, but these things wouldn't be happening. So no, it's been really interesting. I'm actually learning some things and getting confidence along the way.
Yes.
So I see you're back, Lucretia. Is there any word?
Hey, I'm back.
Is there any word?
She's in process. My son called from Flagstaff, and whoops, am I still there?
Yeah,
You're
you
here.
are.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so my son was calling from Flagstaff. This is when you live so far apart, and you need to be connected.
Yeah.
She's just, this may take a while, and I said, honey, that's just how it goes.
Right. Right.
It's the process. So I think she's in early labor.
Yes.
And, you know, she's there, she and her husband are there by themselves. So we'll see how it goes.
Now she's in Martinique.
Correct.
Do the French do the birthings a little differently from our, you know, operating room kinds of things?
Yeah.
That makes it a lot more personal and comfortable.
Yes. She's essentially prepared for a home birth. She's registered in the hospital. She will, she has a birthing spa that they brought to her home, and a midwife will be there as she gets further along. They're in touch with each other. If she has complications, then they have a car so they can get to the hospital. She's registered there. But most likely the birth will be at home.
Wow.
Now, does the spa involve water?
Yes.
That's fabulous.
Oh, it's wonderful.
That is really fabulous. Yes.
It's an inflatable, portable. It's like a little hot tub.
Right.
Yeah. So, and they arrived. It was 3 weeks ago in Martinique. For those of you who don't know, they've been sailing from France, so the timing is good. And then they had about 2 weeks before the lockdown. Martinique is French, so they have the same French restrictions with the pandemic that France does. So Jess is, and Pierre, they've gotten everything that they need. They're waiting. But before they the lockdown happened, they had meetings almost every day, either with the midwife. This midwife has a wonderful birthing community. And so, whoops, sorry. I'm going to try to mute.
To be continued.
Oh, that may be it.
Yeah.
Woo.
I was going to say something about, you know, sometimes you get on the telephone with somebody and there's some feedback. You can hear your own voice. I think that's what happens sometimes in this situation. People are not talking. It's just the feedback that you're getting.
Yeah, and so I've been intentional of you know, if I hear a lot of feedback coming from a specific person or their iPad or computer or whatever, I just mute them. And sorry if I did that to you a few times. You know, it's nothing personal. It's just trying to make sure that the person we're hearing, we can hear them well.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, I'll chime in for the passage one last thing, and then we can finish if that's what we want. I think that this passage in John is so John. It's so the Gospel of John in every way, because John is known as the very Christological gospel, and he has a very high Christology. He thinks a lot about Jesus and Jesus' messiahship, and you know, it's it's a passage that shows both sides of Jesus and what the church affirms in Jesus' full humanity and his full divinity. I mean, it shows a Jesus who is able to resurrect someone who is dead, one that shows the divinity of Jesus. Jesus, in this passage, he says, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And so it's Jesus saying, hey, I'm here. There's no need to worry, you know. But at the same time, it shows a Jesus who's not only transcendent and divine, but a Jesus who is very earthly and very human as well. And a Jesus that shows a lot of empathy and solidarity. And I think that's where this passage strikes me the most, the solidarity piece. You all mentioned the community coming together, but even Jesus feels a lot of empathy when I think it was Amy pointed out the verse where verse 33, when Jesus is deeply disturbed, deeply moved by seeing other people crying and weeping. And so I like to think of a God who, you know, in the midst of all this anxiety, of all this fear, of all this, what are we going to do, you know, and tears coming down, not only because of this pandemic, but also in light of the news of our beloved Forrest passing away, you know, all the tears. I like to think of a God who is deeply disturbed and moved, like Jesus was in this case. And you know, it's a God who is in solidarity and suffers with those who suffer, cries with those who cries. And this is the picture of that we get of Jesus in this passage.
Yes. Wow.
Just a note on that. Reason the Gospel of John is not considered one of the synoptic Gospels is that everything in John is through the eyes of the resurrection has already happened. So for John, the resurrection is in every single story from the beginning. That's why you don't have the
Missed the last.
prologue. In the beginning was the Word was God. And so the beginning of John is a parallel to creation. So yeah, thanks for reminding us of that, Gabe, because it is a gospel written through the resurrection.
Which, and actually just having Jesus as Messiah, the Son of God. I mean, we had before Jesus, we had the prophets, and the prophets were there to speak through God to the people. They were usually just recriminating them all and predicting things that would happen. Well, that would be bad or sometimes good. But we needed all humanity, all believers needed to have a God that felt directly with them, and to have a human being be the peace of God, Piece, to display all the things that we as humans feel and suffer, whether it's joy, gladness, suffering, hurt, that we could see that God, this God that we worship, is, even though we define him the only way we know how as humans, but is us. We are a part of God too. And God feels and understands the same way we do. You know, a way to make God personal to each one of us. rather than something out there that's undefinable and untouchable.
Mhm.
Christianity is the only religion that does well. No, the religions that have multiple gods do that, I guess. As well.
You guys may have talked about this while I was gone, but you're talking about that, Ruth, makes me think about the part of the scripture where Jesus talks to God and says, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for hearing me. It's kind of a modeling.
Yep.
You listen to me, you trust me. Thank you. And then he does the instructing of Lazarus to come forth. But I agree. I appreciate what you said, Gabe, too. There's this relationship piece that Jesus, I just think, always models. It's just who he was.
Thanks for coming back to that verse. I think that verse for me is where what I was looking for earlier, where he shows off. Father, I thank you for having heard me. But I knew you always hear me. But I have said this for the sake of the crowd staff. You know that you hear me.
Yes.
You hear me.
Yeah, yeah.
So they may believe you sent me. So that's
You
when
think that was John?
What's that?
I think it was John.
Was that John? A little editorial.
Yeah. Just in case you don't think you have the right guy, he's the right guy. Right after that is when he says, Lazarus, come out. It's like, it's part of his prayer. I mean, there's no amen before he.
That's right.
It's all under the same quotes, you know?
Right, he thanks him before it actually happens.
Yeah. When he had said, no, the narrative is when he had said this, he cried out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. Yeah, I mean, so maybe the prayer gave him some juice to get really confident and say, Lazarus, come out. So, yeah, it's so Lazarus has to come out, and the people have to unbind him.
Yeah.
I like what you said, Bob, about freeing him, because in so many acts that Jesus has done, he has freed people from something else. Yeah.
You know, I mean, like last week, the beggar, you know, the blind man was a beggar.
Right.
That's his living. He's healed. He doesn't have to beg anymore, and it changes his whole relationship with the whole community. So this changes the relationship between Lazarus and the whole community. I mean, he's back in the community. It's tough to be in the community when you're wrapped in the cloths they wrapped you in when you died, you know? So that's like the final piece of the unwrapping is the unwrapping.
Yeah.
And it was up to the crowds to let him go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm just thinking out. That's similar to being a sanctuary church. We were, in so many ways, we gave the people a chance and not be deported. But on the other hand, we were a reverse prison. The fear and the threat from outside kept them in the church. And the joy in Sayapa was the letting go. You know, we're not complete until we're let go of.
Yeah.
Or until we let go of whatever is binding us.
Yeah.
Holding us.
I have a question. I didn't hear about whether anybody was actually able to walk with her up to the Mennonite church. Did that happen?
Yeah.
Bev, you have a paper right in front of your face.
Sorry.
So that did happen. I
Hi,
wasn't.
Amy.
You can't,
Hi,
Here.
where are you?
where's who?
I think Amy left. Amy,
Yeah, Amy
Oh,
D left.
Well,
Bev,
I'm glad
Amy's
that-
still here.
the other Amy is here.
yeah. Did we talk
Yeah.
over?
Yes.
Amy Damcona's still with you.
Oh, Amy Benedict left.
Benedict, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what she was waving about.
Yeah, she was saying goodbye.
We're giving her one more chance. So, where were we? You're saying,
Well, we were just, I was just asking about how it went when everyone was walking with Suyapa up the street to the Mennonite church.
went fine. Good
It
walk.
went- How many people went?
Remember, Gabe? 30?
there were probably about 30 to 40 people. I
Oh,
would say.
good. Very good. Yeah.
Bob, I'm going to sign off. It was good to see all of you. And thank you
Yes.
for leading this. And good luck, Lucretia.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye,
Yeah.
Bonnie.
Will we do this again next Wednesday?
You can.
Yes,
Yes,
we can
let's
do it
do
again. Does this time work for everyone? Is it an
This
okay time?
Adair, hi.
That works well. Yeah, for me.
This works. We'll
It
do
works,
next
although
week.
my app told me to get up this morning for Bible study at 6 something, but that's okay.
Did she call you?
Alexa, yes.
Oh, wow.
She just spoke to me right now. Sorry, Alexa.
Alexa's in a pattern here. You got to
No.
change the time.
That's
Now,
Yes.
now you don't have to wake up until 11:30 or
Yeah.
11:45.
Our dog woke us up.
I've been on the phone with my sisters because my niece's doctors, I think they're wrong, told her that she had gone through the virus and she's recovered.
Oh, really?
I think they're wrong, but that's just me.
That's interesting.
So-
Well,
so
I don't know if everybody knows this, but my brother came back from Ecuador about a week ago and he was not feeling very well and he got the test. He had been self-isolating for 2 weeks. He got the test and they said he did not have the virus.
All right.
So that was
Good.
really good.
Hi,
Yes.
dear.
Next week, you're going to have a choice of two gospel readings. Kate picks them.
Can I call you back, Josh? I'm going to call you.
The two readings are, we know it is Palm Sunday, but it's also called Passion Sunday.
Call.
Passion Sunday. The Passion story is the story from Palm Sunday till Easter. And it's the same reading as you would have on Good Friday if you read the whole gospel text from the beginning of Jesus coming into Jerusalem through his crucifixion and burial on Good Friday. So that's Palm Sunday. That's Passion Sunday. Palm Sunday is just that part of Scripture where Jesus enters Jerusalem, and you have a donkey, two donkeys, or a colt, depends which gospel you're reading from. So, and that ends with the spreading of the palms and Jesus' entry into Jerusalem. So, the hint is that passage is a few verses. The Passion story is like a chapter and a half because it's the whole story. But when Gabe decides which of those he's going to go with, I will we'll send that out. We'll probably send both out so you can see what I'm talking about with the two different approaches.
Is there going to be something on Friday, Friday, not Palm Sunday, on Good Friday?
Something on Good Friday?
Yes. Isn't that usually the one where that passage is read and then all of the draperies and everything come off of the front of the church
Yeah,
and it's left in quiet and dark?
yes.
Yeah.
Or around here, they do the 7 last words, but that's not going to happen.
I've heard both of them.
None of those are, I mean, if let's take that into consideration, Gabe, if we want to do something in Holy Week.
Yeah, we might be able to do something live like we're doing now.
Just wondering. I just was asking. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because the president thinks that we're all going to be filling the churches on Easter Sunday.
Well, Gabe, the other thing I had heard was that there's a possibility that Zoom would, there's one level where you could have up to 100 people, but if we had a church service, we could have higher, but that would cost some. And they're waiving the cost for education. And I was wondering if they were waiving the cost for churches or religion.
I have no idea. I'll have to look into that. But that's something that we may consider. I mean, I'm probably going to pay. Well, I'm not, but the church will probably pay for the services, the Zoom services here, and to continue.
Yeah, I think that's a real good thing.
And Ross sent something out about how Faye and he have 2 different accounts, and Faye's is free, but it's 40 minutes, and he pays $15.99 a month, and that allows unlimited time and up to 100 people.
Right.
We obviously aren't near 100 people for a Bible study.
No, but I'm talking about if we decided to do it for a church service.
Yeah, that's what my friend in Ardmore did last week.
Yeah, and that's what they do in the Unitarian Church in Germantown Avenue. I know on Lincoln Drive.
So yeah,
one of the women here goes to the Unitarian Church, and she was in it through Zoom last Sunday.
I'm going to need to leave because I need to touch base with my husband who's at HUP.
Okay.
But just to kind of be clear for me, this coming Sunday, because I actually have to be until the big quarantine is released. I'm just not allowed to go out. I have an immune deficiency thing that I just kind of live with. So my doctor's just saying stay in. But are we going to be able to have services by Zoom, or is that what we're saying? We're not sure.
Oh, go ahead, David. You answer that.
What the 3 of us discuss is kind of doing a pre-recording like we did last week, and doing it. The 3 of us would do it through Zoom, and we would piece all of our pre-recordings together through Zoom. So Jody will record the choir singing and her playing the organ, and then she'll share her screen on Zoom, and then all of this will be recorded. And then I'll post it on, I'll send the link to it, or I'll post it to the website.
Okay, I'll look on the website then for information.
I'll send you an email.
Will show up on the website, right? Gabe?
What's that?
Whatever we do will show up on the website.
Yes, I'll be able to embed it as long as I post it to YouTube or Google or something else like that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry I was in and out so much today, but
Oh, I'm glad you're here.
it's exciting. It's good to see everyone. I've missed you a lot. So everybody stay well.
Okay, Grandma.
And you too.
Okay.
All
Bye.
right, take care.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
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 Take care. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
Gabe, can you stay on a minute?
Yes.
Okay. Are we getting off now?
If you want to.
Okay, leave meeting.
Do you want to say?
Yeah, it was good to have you today.
It was
Okay. Right hand. Barbara said, Adair, it was good to have you.
It was good to listen.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to, right hand corner at the bottom, leave meeting. All right, we'll see you. Thank
All right,
you.
take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Gabe.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bob.
Yeah, glad you joined us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adair. Take care. Glad you joined us as well. Yeah.
So, do you have the feasting on the word book for Lent?
1 second. Let me stop with the recording.